It's Wednesday, August 24th, 2022, 4:03 p.m. This Board of Commissioners budget workshop is called to order. City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Mayor Hendricks,
Here.
Commissioner Taglerini,
Here.
Commissioner Kerr,
Here.
Commissioner Hudson,
Here.
and for the record, Commissioner and Vice Mayor Andrews is absent.
First is public comment. Anyone who would like to make a public comment, please approach the podium. State your name and address for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and do not include any topic that is on tonight's agenda. Hey, John, sorry to put you off, but we got to go by that.
That's fine. John Connolly, 600 Normandy. As I was saying before, or halfway through on the Leverack situation, I think they've had more than ample time to build there. I have not seen any plans, but I think I asked you if there was a permit pulled, and you said yes. Getting back to our side, meaning the city side, there would be something put in place in the building code as to when commercial, residential, a starting date and a finishing date. That's what I'm proposing. This way, these projects are not dragged out for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. There's houses on Bay Point that they're going on like over a year. And there's residents there that it's really unfair because you're paying all these taxes. Meanwhile, you have a construction site. And then they get finished with that one, they start another one. But they're not finishing in ample time. So, to word that properly, if I was giving a permit, I would ask the contractor, homeowner, when they were going to start, when they were going to finish, have them sign it and notarize it. So, if they do break it, it's on them. It's not on the city of Madeira Beach. This way, at least some of this stuff is getting done. Like, you got the boat issue done. I understand it was a lot of things with the federal waters and so on and so forth. But when you come across that bridge coming into this beautiful town and you see that looks like Afghanistan. So, why? And that's, there's a lot of people asking why. So, that's all I have to say on that issue. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Anyone else? Okay, next up is fiscal year 2023 personnel and operating budget presentation.
Mr. Mayor and City Commissioners, Robin Gomez, City Manager, and this is our fifth for next year's budget. And so what we have this afternoon is really the budget in its totality as to what we're looking to spend, the revenues that we're going to receive next year, and the expenditures for next year, what we're going to spend. We can go through this, or will go through this sort of item by item, pages. It is a little bit of a lengthy document, but, and we can go through starting on page 4 of 61, just to show what we're looking to spend next year. It's a $37,329,650. This slide shows the by fund of all of our expenditures. And of course, we are required under state statute to provide a balanced budget, meaning, again, our revenue must equal our expenditures, and that's what we are showing. Sorry, I'm on the wrong. It's our revenue up on the screen. And then our expenditures comes on the following page. And so they are, again, the exact same amount. We will go through these funds individually. Please feel free to stop and ask us questions. Myself and Andrew Laughlin, our city treasurer, will be pretty much providing most of the items, and also our department directors are here for any specific questions of any department. As we've discussed before, some of the changes going into next year, this budget includes a 5% salary increase across the board. It includes raising also any of our positions that were below $15 an hour rate up to $15 an hour, except for sanitation to $18 an hour. We are proposing two new positions, one in our parks and in our recreation department, a grounds maintenance worker, and a new position, a part-time position in our parking fund. Those are the only two new positions. And then just some changes in other positions that have been discussed before, such as the parks supervisor becoming a parks coordinator, and then offsetting some of the hours on other positions that we discussed, including the HR director and the mechanic, and I think just our broadcast technician as well. And one part-time position in the city clerk, or what was a seasonal or part-time position in our clerk, to be a full-time position as well. But we can go over some of those details. I don't know, Andrew, if there's anything else you wanted to.
Yeah, I think that's good start. That on page 2, I think, is the configurations page. So that shows in our budget system the configurations that we used to derive certain figures, mainly in the personnel. I know that's hard to see, but one of those is the citywide pay increase at 5%. So that's those are the drivers mainly on those personnel costs.
Okay, since we're talking about employees, the positions we have open in planning, positions we have opening in the fire department, that's a contract, so that's different. But do we need to do something different to be able to fill those positions? Or do you have enough latitude in what you have there that we can fill them?
Well, we look to fill vacancies as quickly as we can. We've been struggling with both of the ones that you mentioned. We simply look to find other avenues, other methods to try to encourage applicants, and we even looking at the salary structure, although for the fire, it is governed by the contract, by the collective bargaining agreement. For the planner, we did stay within our range, but we have raised the starting salary. It's just been a struggle. We're not the only ones. Other cities are struggling to fill positions in their community development department or their planning department. So we even went to a hiring job fair for first responders a few weeks ago, thanks to from Career Source Pinellas. I think they had reached out to Commissioner Curran. So we're using Indeed.com. We're using just about every method out there to try to encourage applicants.
It's a universal problem. All the cities, all the businesses are just having a problem hiring people at this point. It's just, I hate to say it's the way things are right now, but that's a true statement.
And Chief, was there anything you wanted to add?
Can you hear? Yeah,
There you go.
Between the job fair we just went to, the last testing we had not a good candidate pool. So we didn't hire anybody. We opened it back up. We kept it open until filled. We were able to keep it open for approximately a month. And I closed it last Friday, and we have 18 applicants that are actually qualified to test for. So that's actually a really big pool for us, for Madeira Beach. So through social media, through that job fair, we have a decent pool to, at this point on paper, to possibly hire from. So we have one open position now, and I spoke with all the commissioners and the city manager about what is possibly coming down the pipe in 2015 or 2025, excuse me. And I don't know if that's up for discussion or not right now, but we have to, for our ISO, we have to increase our staffing by 2025.
Yeah, I think we'll bring that back to you later, if not later this year, in early '24, because that will obviously impact the budget beginning in fiscal '25, which we have a little bit of time, but we will begin that discussion early on so that provide you the fiscal impact, because clearly there's going to be a fiscal impact.
Is that for staffing of the new firehouse?
That's just for Madeira Beach itself.
Okay.
That's just essentially the minimum staffing
Okay, increasing by one, I think, on a
Yep, per shift.
truck, yeah.
per shift.
And then depending on what happens with the Reddington station, that could be another hiring pool, but that should take care of itself between the EMS funding and the fire contracts.
So that's not soon enough that we have to budget for it now? We don't have to?
Not for fiscal '23. I think it could be fiscal '24, but probably won't be until fiscal '25, right? I think by the middle of 2024,
Yes.
we'll have to start planning as to what we'll need to do starting October 1 of 2024. So we're about 2 years away. Just wanted to kind of highlight other changes going forward from the current year to next year are several of the projects, and we've received the appropriations. So for example, for the dredging of Johns Pass. So looking at, as we go through this, you'll see some of the just adjustments and changes. We created a parking fund, so we're separately accounting for all parking revenues and expenditures in a specific enterprise business type fund. So I think as we go through this, we can go through the slides.
That used to just be part of the general fund, is that right?
Yes, all parking revenue was just in the general fund.
Now it's got its own line.
Has its own line for parking. Here's all the revenue we're receiving in parking and all the expenditures that, again, we're forecasting just over to spend 2.2 million. The revenue is 2,845,000 in the parking fund. Andrew, if you want to go through.
Can you give us a page number as you scroll to
Oh,
these?
sorry,
so we
yeah,
can
we're
keep
on
up
page-
with you, okay?
This is page 6 of 61.
And maybe if you've got a magnifying glass over there.
This is a busy one.
Yeah, so I can take that. So what page 6 of 61 shows is just your inflows and outflows by fund, and the two net each other to, in essence, create a balanced budget. So for each fund, it shows revenues and other inflows, which consists of taxes, permits, fees, special assessments, intergovernmental revenue, charges for services, judgments, fines, forfeits, miscellaneous revenues, and then other sources. And your other sources is mainly your just transfers in and out among funds and the overhead allocation that the general fund charges the other funds for certain overhead administrative items for shared costs assumed by all, to be assumed by all funds.
Andrew, where does state funding show up on appropriations we're getting?
So should be an intergovernmental revenue, and that's that code
Okay.
33 intergovernmental revenue. So you can see for general fund, that's 4,908,473. And we have detail, so for the general fund, we've got the detail of all these revenues in the next couple pages, and we can kind of go through that, and you'll see where there are some major revenue spikes and some of those grant-related accounts. So the main thing to note here is after you have revenues and other inflows, and you have expenses and other outflows, then that creates either fund balance, net position, carryover that you need to use to balance your budget, or that you have excess that'll be available for the future. And so for certain funds, you do have some excess available for future. So for building fund, we're budgeted at $101,915 surplus. Same thing with the Marina Fund, a $941,270 surplus. And then the Parking Fund with a $613,414 surplus. And that's even after the Parking Fund contributes $1.8 million to the general fund.
Can you give me a page on that, please?
So I'm still on the same page.
Same page, yeah,
This is on
page
page
6.
6 of
Okay.
61. So, governments don't really have a profit and loss because they're not profit motivated, but this is kind of the indicator from a budgetary standpoint of where do we stand budgeted revenues versus budgeted expenses. And so for some funds, budgeted revenues exceed budget expenses, and for others, there's a deficiency. And then that deficiency is covered in order to create that zero net effect with that fund balance net position carryover used. So for the general fund, we do have to pull $1,394,691 from available fund balance. And the main drivers of that is going to be the other uses. There's $3,351,000 of other uses for the general fund. And the main culprits are a transfer to the Archibald Fund because we've got the Beach Growings project. And while that is partially grant funded, I think for 50%, the city is coming out of pocket for quite a bit on that. So there's a $1,750,000 transfer to the Archibald Fund that the general fund is making. And then another big contribution is to the Sanitation Fund, or not, excuse me, to the Stormwater Fund for $1,100,000, and that's for debt service assistance. So those are the big ones: is the Archibald Fund transfer, the Stormwater Fund transfer, and then also a transfer to the Debt Service Fund to pay the governmental activities related debt. So those are the main drivers. So if we didn't do the Beach Growings project, the general fund would be at a surplus.
Yeah.
But because
And,
we didn't, go ahead.
I don't think we have a hard price on that yet, do we, Megan? So hopefully it'll be less. So we don't know.
We hope.
Yeah.
We hope.
Yeah, we put in, I'd have to check the actual page.
I think John is probably pretty good with a backhoe, and he'll go down there on the beach and help us put those groins in. No? Can't do it? Okay.
We have 3.5 million budgeted for FY '23, so that could be, I don't know, that's just based on preliminary estimates.
Sure,
right? So
it
if that
could
goes
be
down,
low.
if that goes down significantly, then the transfer to the Archibald Fund could go down.
Yeah,
So I don't want to alert you to say our general fund is in dire straits, we're pulling 1.3 million out. We'd be at a surplus if we didn't do the Beach Growings project, but Beach Growings project is important, and we have, as I've mentioned in a previous budget workshop, we have accumulated a very healthy fund balance in the general fund.
Yeah, and it's time to bite the bullet and get that done. They're
Yep.
in bad shape.
So those are the main things I wanted to cover on page 6 of 61, just to show the kind of the net impact on each fund, on that fund balance net position, either carry forward used or amounts available. And then on the next page, 7 of 61.
Continues on to the next page.
Yeah, that's in essence the same type of analysis, but instead of by character, it's by function. So culture and recreation. So character meaning taxes, intergovernmental revenue, miscellaneous revenue, personnel services, capital outlay, operating expenses. This one's by function: culture, recreation, general government, physical environment, public safety. So same type of report, but just reported differently categorically. And then the next one is just on page 8 is your overall summary for the general fund that we've shown taxes far and away the largest at 5.8 million. So ad valorem taxes is our highest. And then going into the detail, you can then kind of see, and that so starting on page 9 of 61, that breaks out all the detail by, for your general fund revenues. So you can see our highest revenue earner is the ad valorem taxes, and so we're jumping from a projection of about $4,052,000 to $4,667,000 based on increase in property values.
So this part begins to show the comparisons from the actual year of fiscal '21 to our budgeted for the current year, fiscal '22, and then what we're projecting or estimating for this entire fiscal year of 2022, with, again, the final column, what we're projecting for next year. And this is a 2-page.
Yep.
It goes from
Yep.
page 10 to page 11.
And the other one, let me point out another highlight for the general fund, and this one is more of timing. And that's the Pinellas County line. It's kind of in the middle of page 9 of 61, and that is the Pinellas County. So it's $1,053,006. Megan and I collaborated on that one. That's the Gulf Boulevard undergrounding
The part of
project.
Pennies for Pinellas money.
It's going to be funded by Pennies for Pinellas, but unfortunately, what we're doing is we're going to accelerate that project to try to
Right.
get it done in FY
That
'23.
was-
But the phases of reimbursement aren't going to be immediate. So Pinellas County offers through the Penny 4, this is how much you're going to get in 2022, 23, 24, and 25. So we'll slowly get reimbursed every penny. It's just going to happen over a number of fiscal years instead of immediate. So
Right,
that-
and the cost on that has been going up every year. That's why we decided to go ahead and
Just get it done.
get it done, so.
So, yeah, all good there, just the revenue is deficient in terms of the expense to be incurred on that, and that's, I believe, we had in maintenance, public works, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just pull that department up.
I do have some things highlighted I'd like to go over as we go down this.
Sure. So we've got $2,500,000 budgeted of Gulf Boulevard undergrounding in the Public Works Administration Department, with only $1,053,000 in revenue to cover it. So we have about $1 million shortfall there, but we're going to make that up in FY '24 and '25 when we finally get paid out for the entire project. So again, another reason why we do have a budget shortfall in the general fund, partially due to the Beach Growings project, and then again, partially due to just the timing of reimbursement on the on the Gulf Boulevard undergrounding project. Questions on some of the revenue lines?
Yeah, a few. This is a little one, but People's Gas. Down about, I don't know, 15 lines or so. Goes from projected $10,081 to $6,500. Budgeted was $6,200 in 2022. Does the entire city have natural gas lines, or is it simply a certain
No, there's-
area?
I don't know the exact, Megan, you know the exact area? I think a lot more people have propane than the actual natural gas.
Most of Johns Pass Village, I believe, has gas.
Natural.
Gulf Boulevard, parts of 140th, but most of the back neighborhoods do not have
Okay.
gas.
I was just curious.
And that kind of makes, if you look above that line, Mayor and Commission, utility tax, propane is much higher, even though the franchise fees, I think, are 6%. So even the higher rate, but again, I think we have more propane usage than natural gas.
Okay.
Possibly.
FDOT maintenance agreement going down to 25,000. What does that cover?
I believe that is for the streetlights and/or the signals.
Okay, I thought
Take a look.
the county was handling maintenance on our street lights.
The Duke Energy actually handles the maintenance, but I believe it's because we pay for the cost, but we can get that for sure. We have an agreement with DOT.
Okay. Rent,
The beach chair rentals,
okay.
yeah, that should be in the Archibald Fund, and it's 12,000 a year. And
Well,
we-
this line, though, is for 120,000.
That might be, is that Fantasy Planet or? let me-
Page-
I can double check that.
Page 10, yeah, it doesn't describe what it is. My guess would be Fantasy Planet. They're, what, 11,000?
The one that's just rent?
Yes,
All right, yeah, I think that's the Fantasy Planet, because that's about how much rent we received from that agreement. Sorry, I was mentioning the beach walkover chair rentals, that we received that funding in April. So we just received, or April, in August, we just received it. It was $12,000, but it should be in the Archibald Park Fund rather than the general.
It's about $10,644.20 per month to ASIAG, Moshi, DBA, Fantasy Planet
Yeah,
Beach
that's the
Company.
rent.
yeah, okay. Credit card convenience fee, $15,000. I know we changed one of our vendors for credit card usage. I don't know if that affects that one or if it's somewhere else, Robin, that,
I mean, this is what we charge, right? This is
This would be the convenience fee.
This is
So
the convenience fee that we charge, not what the credit card processing is
okay,
charging.
all right.
That'd be an expense.
So I think we, for example, we're charging $3, I think, as a base
Yeah.
fee. If you pay a $40
Right.
parking ticket, it's $43.
Okay.
That's what we charge.
And the other one, transfer from parking fund, is that for the parking garage, $1,800,000?
No, it's to support the general fund because all parking revenue was in the general fund. So there is an expectation that the parking fund, going forward, since we're now creating a new fund, the parking fund will provide annual transfer to the general fund. And that can fluctuate year to year depending on construction activity with the parking garage.
Okay.
All right, any other no, we're good, okay.
I'm good. If any of the other commissioners have any questions on anything along there?
Now we can go through expenses.
Yep, go
I
ahead.
have one question. Just remind me what the state revenue sharing is. It's a line item ending in 35,125, kind of midway down on the general fund,
On which page?
on
10?
9 of
9
61.
of 61, or 10
Yeah.
of 61.
My 9 is different. than
Right underneath the
yours.
ARPA. No, it's 10 of 62,
Okay, 10, and that's what I thought.
yeah.
Well,
Everyone's
state revenue sharing is, it's a formula-based that I think the majority of the revenues from a combination of cigarette taxes and a portion of, I think, the gas tax, not recalling off the top of my head, but we can look it up. It's just, again, it's a lengthy formula, and every city and county receives a portion of it.
It's derived from census information, so based on population that the state, and I don't know the extent of the revenue sources that the state collects and shares amongst all the counties and municipalities around Florida.
It's the half-cent sales tax right underneath it. Both of those are, again, there's lengthy formulas that define them, and they are.
Oh, okay. I was just curious because it seemed to have a pretty substantial jump
Yeah, so.
for the budget 23.
The Office of EDR, that's the Economic Demographic something, it's the State of Florida Office of EDR provides estimates, revenue estimates for all cities, counties to use. So you can actually go onto that website, click on Communication Services Tax, and they provide what they project will be your collection. Sometimes they're pretty close, sometimes they're a little off, but we've updated our budgeted figures for next year for those particular taxes that comes from the state. So that would be the communication services tax, half-cent sales tax, state revenue sharing, and the local option gas tax.
Okay, so it's provided from the state, that's all.
Provided from the state, yep.
Okay, thank you.
If I can point out one thing too, so on the second page, on page 10 of 61, we do have some zero balances in here, but a few of them I want to point out. So we have set up general ledger accounts, impact fees, residential transportation, impact fees, commercial transportation, impact fees, residential, commercial, public safety, and then impact fees, residential, commercial, culture, recreation. So we have set up those general ledger accounts. I think we are maybe just starting to collect impact fees that went into effect earlier this summer. I have not budgeted. I have absolutely no idea because I have no history. So I didn't budget any revenues for FY22. I do expect some to come in, but they are restricted as to use. So what I anticipate happening is we'll accumulate those revenues and then determine eligible project expenditures to spend on that impact fee revenue. And then we can do a budget amendment at that time to say, hey, at this point, we've collected this many thousands of dollars in transportation impact fees, and here's how we're going to spend it. We can do that via a budget amendment. I'm flying blind on how much to budget because on the revenue side, because I don't know. And we're not budgeting any expenditures from that funding source. So if we start really picking up activity in FY23 and getting some significant revenues, that we can then start planning some eligible capital project expenditures, we can handle that through a budget amendment process, is my line of thinking.
One quick question, since interest rates have gone up substantially recently, can we look at our funds that we have on hand on any kind of renegotiation on interest rates that we're receiving, or move it somewhere where we might be generating a little more income?
Absolutely. So we have our locked-in interest rate that was from 2018 with Hancock Bank, and that was a very favorable interest rate, especially during the time of where interest rates fell in the dumpster, and so we were getting like 2.4 or something percent when rates were about 0.15, 15 basis points. So that expires at the end of September, so we do need to reevaluate, and we have had actually some initial meeting with Hancock Bank. And Mike Fitzgerald, do you want to maybe come up and share some of the results of that meeting and maybe some of the investment strategies that we anticipate to initiate?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mike Fitzgerald, Finance Department. So we met with the bankers and then had a secondary meeting with their investment arm. And so the idea is that we would work and keep a minimum cash liquidity value in the city's operating bank account, and anything determined as surplus, we would look to move it out and we would treat it as an investment. That investment would be per our city investment policy. So it would be, very low risk, basically zero risk, but It would be in CDs, U.S. Treasuries, those type of items. And then Andrew and team and the city manager would look at what we call duration. How long do we want to have that funds in the portfolio? Duration could be 6 months, a year, year and a half, et cetera. And we call that laddering. So how far do we want to take it, and when do they come back via maturity and then back into our bank account? And then it goes back through the process to pay our bills. And anytime we're determining surplus, then we can just go back to market and buy another CD. We'll often refer to that as just roll it over if we don't need it. So we are in discussion with them. We've extended with the bank. So they do have an arm. We also do have the ability to go outside from the bank and look at the marketplace.
Okay, good, thank you.
Just a quick, to go back to the revenue sharing, it's a percentage of the state sales tax and a percentage of the fuel tax. That's how the state derives it. And it's, again, based on population and a bunch of other factors. And the expenditures.
So we start with the general fund, and so you can see on page, well, I think first we have just expenditures by fund, and then we go right into the departments. So there's an expenditure summary for the general fund that shows each of the departments. That's on page 12 of 61. Showing the largest spending departments all the way down. Looks like Board of Commissioners, you're the least expensive, so congratulations on that. And so then from that summary page, all the remaining pages list both department goals and accomplishments and objectives for the next fiscal year, and the detail by general ledger account for the personnel, operating, and capital budgeted expenditures for next year, as well as I think we provided some FTE information, a multi-year FTE table by department. So maybe I just stop there and we can open up for questions if you all want to hone in on specific departments, if you want to take it department by department. Up to you how you want to approach the next pages after page 12.
I just see non-departmental, I see large increases, 23.3% on non-departmental. Can we go over that a little bit? How
Yep,
we
sure.
came to that?
Let's see what that is. So the biggest non-departmental increase is the transfer to the Archibald Fund. So we've always had a transfer to the Stormwater Fund, and we've always had I'm on page 31 of 61, and that shows the expenditure detail for non-departmental. So we've always had a transfer to the Stormwater Fund to pay the principal and interest on that Series 2019 debt. And then, again, always transfer to the Debt Service Fund for the remaining outstanding debt pertaining to governmental activities. And then what's new this year is that transfer to the Archibald Fund, and the only reason that that's being made is due to the Beach Growings project.
Okay, good enough. Public Works Administration, 18.7, that's
So that one's going to be,
part of the same.
that's on page
Undergrounding.
33 of 61.
That's the undergrounding.
Yep, so we got
Okay.
2.5 million in the undergrounding, yep.
JPV, Johns Pass Village. That part of it, is the parking lot considered a part of Johns Pass Village, the one west of the bridge?
Yes.
Okay, so as part of that, because of repaving?
And that's also the dredging.
That's dredging. So we've got 1,556,000 in maintenance dredging that is new.
Okay.
But we also have state appropriations revenue for 1,556,000.
Right.
So it's a wash.
Those percentages are the percentage of the total,
Yeah.
I think,
Okay.
just to be.
Yeah, I was just going, and a lot of these questions I ask, they're simply educational questions for me and the commission.
They're softballs. I like softballs.
Yeah.
And law enforcement, we're going to have in the workshop after this, a presentation on the agreement, as we are going to experience about a 4.6% increase from the current year to fiscal '23. But we'll have more detail on that at the workshop, but an increase primarily due just to increase in personnel costs from the sheriffs and some equipment increases that they're experiencing that they're passing on to us. No change in services or personnel. As a matter of fact, I think we'll hear that they've a little bit of an enhanced level of service by the Marine unit, for sure, although some of that's being eventually, I think, reimbursed back to the sheriff via state funding. But certainly, the Marine unit has been a lot more active from what a lot of people have been telling me this past year. And they're going to continue that through next year when a potential abandoned derelict or other vessel is found anywhere in our area. They are responding to it almost immediately.
Yeah, and I would like to see them do some code enforcement through the canals with derelict docks, because we've got docks that are falling to pieces and drifting off into the intercoastal and up against other people's boats and damaging them. So I'd like to see us doing that.
Going back to the Public Works, where, do we have anything going with the new Public Works building? Is that, any of that included in here, planning?
In our capital budget,
Okay.
once you get to the section on capital budget, which is toward the end of the document, that's where we, again, we capture pretty much all capital projects, but that's where that one is, along with, as we mentioned, the growings, the road street projects, they're all in our capital.
So we have, to be specific, that's on page,
That's like page 50-something.
pause, so the capital improvement plan, so it starts with general fund, and there's a project titled Public Works Building. FY '23 was 200,000, FY '24 is 2 million.
That is on page, what page is it, Andrew? Like
I
50?
might have, looks like, because we changed from portrait to landscape, it didn't.
Let's see.
So it'd be 59, 60, page 60. So it starts on page 59, the capital improvement plan.
But Public Works specifically, well, general fund, yeah, I'm sorry, page 61. General fund. And see Public Works building.
Need longer arms.
Well, so.
While we're on 61, just one little thing I highlighted, and I know we're going to be going back to other things. The very top item, $30,000. You know, I love these chairs. No, what I'm getting at is, can't we just redo these arms on these chairs rather than replacing the chairs? Do we really need to spend 30 grand on replacing these chairs?
Well, it's on a combination of multiple components, not just the chairs.
Well, I just see here, replace
That's one of them.
chairs, add outlets, and upgrade AV. But I just
We can leave the chair, yeah. We can just repair.
repair the armrests. I just can't, I don't want to be extravagant with the people's money here, and I don't know that we need to
Okay.
replace the chairs. That's just my feeling. That's up for other comment, but
I think when we looked at the whole things that we just felt needed changes, but we can
and
certainly
I
leave them.
don't know how much of that was, I know
and-
you can spend a couple
the-
grand on a chair if you want to, but,
Yeah, no, we wouldn't spend, I don't think we'd go probably more than a few hundred per chair. if
well,
that.
I just.
But also the chairs up here for the audience as well, so it was gonna be everything, right?
Yeah, I believe the intention of this is, this room's getting used a lot more for those, like, chamber meetings and stuff, too.
Yeah, a lot.
So something that we could have chairs and then tables that we can use as like a classroom setting and all that stuff, just to make it more.
Or like bleachers.
Yeah. Well, a lot of our rooms get used for a lot of different things, so it makes them more multi-purpose use
Okay,
if they're.
okay. I just didn't want to be, when I saw that on there and I saw replace chairs, I'm thinking commission chamber upgrades. I was afraid it was these chairs that were going, and
Whole thing.
okay, I'm off that.
Are, are there any big asks from the IT for the AV system?
It's really just to, I think even just to rearrange like up here, but really it's nothing extensive. I know there's some equipment that we do need to replace. We can provide the details for that, but I don't think there have been too many enhancements in several years, but I can get more details on it.
I think the computer for back there needs an upgrade for what we've done with all the other enhancements.
Back to,
And on the capital, are we on the capital improvements, or is that what we're looking at?
yeah, I mean, you can if you have questions, question was brought
Well,
up.
the 50,000 for the 2023 budget for John's Pass boardwalk repairs, if I recall, was there an engineering study done on that, and has that been quoted, or?
There has been multiple inspections on that, and we are currently, I'm working with a vendor right now, so I'll have some more information soon.
I don't think there have been any major repairs to it, though.
There have not been any major repairs to the boardwalk in several years.
So really having the inspections gives us that data, that information as to what may need. I mean, it could be obviously something that you can't see, but
Right.
we'll have better data once we receive all
Right,
that back. yeah.
Honestly, I think that number probably
Quite
a
a
little
little low.
low.
Well, it's more maintenance items for the pilings.
Okay,
So I think I have probably 9 that I'm waiting for a quote for right now, because most of the pilings down there have been wrapped. So it's just, there's a handful, maybe a little bit more that have not.
so they basically inspect them, and then they wrap them, and if they
Correct.
need to replace them, that's,
Yes.
okay. And then the repair of the pavers that are sinking, is that a big deal? I didn't realize we had a,
Those pavers down there are very old, so we have
Just
several
in-
areas just as maintenance items that will
Yeah.
need to be, yeah,
Okay.
'cause with the heavy trucks driving on them, unfortunately, they weren't put in to withhold that, so there's several areas I have to go back and fix.
I noticed down there the other day, even the walking areas, there are some spots that have sunk. One paver in particular had dropped like 4 inches.
I'd love to get rid of the pavers down there, but I'm working on different ideas with that. I'll come to you with that next year.
That'd be a good time to do it.
All right. So really, really the smaller areas from finance down through my office, the clerk, we do outsource the IT function. We will be issuing an RFP for that later this year, so hopefully what we've budgeted should be more than sufficient to cover those costs, but we will be bringing that back to you for approval for a firm. And our HR, again, just a part-time, we did, as I mentioned earlier, less hours for that position, kind of based on the historical that position had been working. And the budget includes, as we've mentioned before, for expenditures mainly in Archibald and the general fund, an additional nearly $380,000 for maintenance of all of our parks, as we've discussed before.
Have you got a page number there for me, Robin?
I was really just commenting in general of the other departments. This is back to page 13.
Okay.
The general fund expenditures. I think Andrea was kind of going through some of these and then fielding providing the answers to some of your questions. So if you have any specific questions for any other
On this, let's see. General fund department summary. I'd like to start really basically at the top and work down. City clerk, there's a big increase. I understand there's some software that's needed for city clerk's office. But I also see that going from $316,000 to $444,000. So you're looking at a $125,000 increase.
I'm actually, if I get my laserfish, I can save probably about $20,000 right there in a contract service that I do. So that'll come down. I'm working on it coming down. So, and I'm gonna be saving half the amount what we're paying for our agenda management. We got one more vendor to watch a demonstration on Friday. So we're hoping to cut that down in half. So my numbers they're starting to come down.
Okay.
Really, as I mentioned earlier, we're converting what for the current year was listed as a seasonal position will be a full-time. The records clerk position
Yes.
go from, again, it was listed this current year as a seasonal employee. We did not fill that position for most of the year. So for the fiscal '23, we're converting it back to the records clerk, administrative assistant, and obviously it's at a higher salary than the seasonal employee. And that explains, when you look line item under salaries and wages, the increase from the budgeted 187 for this year, 187,000 to 224,000. So that's about 37,000 of the increase in the department, as well as as Clara mentioned, for the software and the contractual service, but we're looking to spend less on the contractual service.
Yes. So should have a whole lot better number before the budget starts. And plus, because it was gonna cost money to implement the new softwares and get everything changed over, so I held off on hiring the other person so that I would have monies to spend on that and I wouldn't be in the red.
Okay.
And the finance director had said that I wouldn't have to do a budget amendment if I find the money within the budget already, and then we just do a interfund transfer. So that's what I've been working on.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. City manager's office.
Yes. So the increases really in the largest increase, promotions and public relations, we're looking to have annually our grouper gala, the one that we had at a much more, marketed, advertised, but have the grouper gala event. We're looking to add, to continue with the 75th anniversary, mainly the merchandise, the hats, the shirts, to continue that through fiscal '23, but convert it into a city store type, and we'll be adding some merchandise to that up to, everything like, just to celebrate and recognize our residents, that you're in Madeira Beach, possibly something as a license plate you can put on the front of your car that would have the city logo. I think Bel Air Beach, the city of Bel Air Beach, or Bel Air did that years ago. And so just more items that we can make available in a type, to continue with what we've been selling here in the lobby. Also, additional funding for tourism-specific economic development and tourism, and what that, we're looking for grants, obviously, from Visit St. Pete Clearwater, but some of those are specific to special events. They do quite a bit of the marketing, advertising countywide. This would be specific to us, even though Visit St. Pete Clearwater has been doing more to promote specifically John's Pass Village Boardwalk. If we are able to do a little bit more of what we've done in the past, again, to continue with what's been happening, and that's the Grouper Gala we had at $30,000, the city store at $10,000, the tourism economic development at $20,000, and those are we had not budgeted for those in the past, so that's $60,000 of that increase. I had $10,000 for each chamber, so each of the two chambers would receive $5,000 a contribution to us, and also a contribution to the Coast Guard Auxiliary that we had mentioned, discussed before, for $10,000. So that's the lion's share of our increase. One other one that we didn't have is, I don't think the city we did not budget for I guess I'll call it the contractual obligation for your current city manager, which is in the agreement, and so we're budgeting for the insurance that's provided for the dependents. As you can see, that just wasn't budgeted in prior years, and possibly the previous manager did not have that as a benefit. I think as all of you are aware, I do have a 2-year agreement, so the benefits that I'm receiving will continue the same as next year, although I think I receive a few less vacation days, which I'm fine with, perfectly fine with all of it. Sorry.
Yeah, while we're on this subject, and I would like to bring this up to the commission, and that is that Mr. Gomez has done an outstanding job in the time he's been here, and I would like to, effective January 1, do a one-time bonus of $5,000 to Mr. Gomez in appreciation of what he's done. And the economic climate has changed since he signed on. I know he's got a contract, but I also want to be fair with him, and I want to be sure that he's a city manager that wants to stick with us for years to come. And so I would like to do that for him starting in January. This is something we'll need to vote on, so we can't do it tonight or vote on it tonight, but I'd like that passed on. Hopefully y'all are in agreement with him to do that as a one-time payment since he's under contract and he gets a certain salary. But I think he's shown that he earns it. He's all over this city every day, 7 days a week. I see him walking up and down, just literally all over the place. He covers the city on a weekly basis. Food for thought for the commission, and I'd like to see that put on the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd support that.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm fine with that.
You're going to make me blush, I guess. But thank you. And of course, I wouldn't be as successful without all of the staff.
I realize that, and all the staff's getting a good raise, and we want you to be a happy camper too.
Oh, I'm live on an island at the beach. Couldn't be happier to do that. So thank you. Appreciate that. So then we'll make that adjustment to the budget. As I've said before, I feel that what I've accepted is I'm very content with the 2-year agreement, but I really do appreciate that offer.
And if I could just jump in here, there is some provision of the state statute that deals with bonuses, one-time bonuses like that, and I want to make sure that I've got the legal research completed for that. So before we go so far down that path we can't return, I want to make sure that, that I can bring you up to speed on that law. So hopefully I'll get that to you.
Okay, thank you.
So the total budget and one other increase in the salaries and wage, well, the 5% increase for the current the two positions other than mine. This budget did not have an increase for my position, but we're moving the broadcast and the broadcast technician, a position that was .75 full-time equivalent under our IT, even though it's not a department, but just in the IT area, moving that position under me and converting it to full-time from .75 to 1, so a full-time position. The salary difference is about $21,000, but really to kind of focus a lot more on getting, obviously, all of everything that we do in this room, everything that we do in our media, everything that goes out, that we do have other, additional work that can certainly be done, as well as other projects, researching for grants, actually compiling a lot more grants than we have before, being sort of and just other smaller projects like that we need to be completed. So that's the other proposed change, to do that. And also to continue to be, in essence, the liaison with our IT contract, and especially as we go out for the RFP, and whether we stay with the same firm or a new firm, we will still need that liaison work between those services that are provided. And that's pretty much the reason for the increases.
Okay. EMS, fire, sees about $150,000, well, more than that. Last budget was $1,781,000. 2023's projected budget is $2,068,570. Is that all salaries?
The majority of that is the salaries and wages, what we're contractually obligated to provide, which is the 3% cost of living and the 3% step increase, a total of 6%.
Okay. Johns Pass Village, that's the dredge, I'm sure, that big difference. And
yes. Yeah, because you can see the state appropriations in the revenue and then in the expenditures.
Yeah, and
Andrew mentioned earlier, just inflow, outflow.
And Public Works is groins and undergrounding. Okay.
So I'd mentioned before, one addition, the new positions in recreation, the grounds maintenance worker. Again, and the budget that we've included, the nearly $380,000 for maintenance of our parks, that'll be part of what that position will work with and oversee, as well as just additional maintenance on the fields themselves. We're getting more usage of our fields, I think, than we have in the past, and between the Little League, the softball, and then certainly just the ongoing softball tournaments that we have almost throughout the year now. So, and then the college teams, and we're looking to expand the college teams coming and playing in March for the fields, and hoping to get additional schools to come out and play, and that has a pretty big economic impact as well for the area.
So, community development.
Go back. And
I would think we're adding,
let's see.
I'm on page 20.
And yeah, it's left out the third position that we're adding, a planning technician, just again, based on the amount of work, the quantity, the level of work, and we've been taking a little bit longer to get applications approved, but with the additional technician, that should be able to help out. I don't.
Yeah, and I've mentioned before that our building department and planning, community development's kind of our Achilles heel, so I understand we need to beef it up. Well, insurance prices have gone through the roof, haven't they?
Well, our medical insurance at about an 8.6% increase. We do have a request, well, one item that other cities do, something for you to consider would be, right now, we do provide 100% plan for employees for the medical, it's for medical, dental, vision. We do not provide any funding, city funding, employer funding for any dependent care. I believe we have close to 15 employees that do have dependent care, and so they're realizing that 9% increase for their coverage. Most cities do provide some sort of, in their budget, to assist with that, anywhere from 25% to 75%. Our cost it's not a significant increase in the budget. If, for example, the city were to provide 25% of the cost for dependent care, whether that's a spouse or spouse plus children. So I think our total cost for the year would be roughly about 30 to 40,000, depending on the plan, if we were to provide 25% of the coverage. So we have not included that in this budget, but really I think we brought it up at a prior workshop, along with if we were to provide any type of compensation to employees who opted out of our medical coverage, which again, other cities do provide, anywhere from a few thousand to, just a few $1,000s to the employees who opt out. We've budgeted this year, I think it's 11,000 for medical per employee. 11,600.
11,665.
So that's to cover employee health. And again, we don't budget anything for any dependent coverage, and we do not provide any employees that opt out of our health coverage, we do not spend that $11,000 to cover the employees.
Yeah, but we're also paying employees who opt out, and personally, I've never heard that before. Maybe that's a standard practice, but we're already, as you know, I wasn't a proponent of the 5%. Nobody else was a proponent of the 4%. So and one commissioner was a proponent of 6%, so we compromised. But I think that's enough for this year.
Okay.
That's my opinion. I don't know that I agree with paying people that, for instance, at my age, I've got medical coverage. Would that mean that if an employee my age were working for the city, they'd also get a cash bonus because they weren't getting any medical coverage?
Well, and you just brought up the flip side to that, is providing a benefit to a certain number of employees, not every employee. That's the downside to that. So if somebody does not have any dependents, what do we do then for that employee? They're not receiving the benefit.
I mean, we've got an employee now that is almost $60 an hour. I think he's in that window where he's getting, on top of $60 an hour, 57, whatever it is, he's getting
Well, yeah, well, we
some
actually,
money for his insurance too.
well, we budgeted for that position at .75, so it's not going to be a full-time employee.
Last time I looked, it was put in there as full-time employee, but I really, and I know I've beaten this horse before, but I sure have a problem with that.
Okay.
When the mechanics at the car dealership are making a maximum of 35 an hour and we're paying 60 an hour, it's just hard for me to deal with.
Yeah, and just so that you're clear, the clerk just distributed a little bit of the research that they had been doing on the dependent benefits and what some of our neighbors provide and what we provide. And I'm sorry, it's not what we provide 100% of the premium for employee only, and then do not provide any assistance or any funding for any of the spouse or dependent coverage, as well as, again, if employees opt out of our health plan. All the 3 prior cities that I've worked in did offer some combination of that. But again, I think, Mayor, I've had a little bit of the discussion before, and I mean, just to bring this up because it was brought up to me and just something for consideration for all of you.
Well, I would love to continue the conversation. As you might expect, I'm in favor of providing dependents coverage. And in the school board, when I worked for Pinellas County Schools, they did offer something to teachers who are employees who declined the insurance, a cash amount. I don't think it's an anomaly. I think it's kind of normal. And again, as we were going to be, if we're going to provide the best quality services to our residents, if we're going to provide good employees, we're going to attract good employees, I think that's something we could discuss.
Okay, moving on.
It's just some of the remaining departments are, as we've discussed, Archibald Park. If you have any questions, or now we're into, wait a minute, I think I skipped over. Right, so we pretty much that concluded the general fund and all the departments that are in the general fund, and then the document continues as we hit page 38. We begin our enterprise business type funds, beginning with Archibald. Really, the only increases to this fund are primarily other than the capital improvements that are on there because the beach groins, and I think some of the undergrounding that is in here, really just the salary increase, the 5% increase for the 4 positions that are budgeted out of the Archibald fund. So no other significant increases, no additional employees. The building fund, again, really, which covers all the staff in the building department, as well as a part of the salary, the cost for some of the planning staff, the department head, the senior planner, and the I think those are the only 2. Anyway, the increases related to the salaries, again, the 5% increase, but again, as Andrew mentioned earlier, the revenue is going to exceed the expenses again in fiscal '23. And that's on again, the building fund starts on page 40.
Something I've noticed, and I've noticed it in all the departments. For instance, Archibald Park. But this continues through a number of things. What's the difference between a senior grounds maintenance worker and a grounds maintenance worker?
I think for
What's
one,
the difference?
levels of experience, years of service, I would say I think just an overall knowledge, kind of, Jay, if you could.
So tenure.
Yeah, or Megan, go ahead.
It's the different tiers, just like any other department that we have. You start at the bottom, which is a grounds worker, and then you go to a senior, just public works technician, senior public works technician, supervisor, the different levels.
So is it experience? Is there a test, or is it simply longevity?
It's levels of responsibility. It's if you have a CDL driver, you go into that second tier. If you have more experience, you're hired at a different level than just a first level employee.
Well, my point is, and I worked for a large company for a lot of years, but you could get promotions, but if you were doing the same job for X number of years, you were basically, although you got raises over the years, you were still, for instance, in a brewery, you were still a brewery worker.
Well, if you get raises and then you go above that cap on that level 1, then you go into the second tier.
But it's essentially, I mean, based on levels of responsibility, and our job descriptions do have enhanced or higher levels of responsibility, the duties that you do, the knowledge that you've acquired over the years that you're required to do the job, and it allows for, progression throughout the organization over years of service. And I mean, I completely understand what you stated, and it's pretty rare in cities that you do have just kind of your horizontal, there's more vertical to allow that. But I mean, it just, somebody starting out, they can see that there is at least the ability for upward mobility over time as you acquire really through years of experience, or in some instances, additional education and or training.
Well, I'm just, basically, it's like if you're not growing as an employee over the years, I mean, every employee should be growing and learning more things over the years. I did. I think everyone here did in their job, and I don't want us to be going overboard on salaries and simply just because somebody's been here X number of years, okay, we're going to give you another title and raise you up, although you're doing the same thing you've done since day one.
Although we'll
knowledge.
we'll make sure that doesn't happen, that there is the review process, because when a vacancy opens up, we do advertise, we do go through the hiring process to make sure that we do have the most qualified person.
Okay.
And that's kind of, fire and police are kind of, in many cities are that way. There's simply a lot of that just promote from within.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to beat anybody up, but I don't want to be putting people into higher job grades just for the sake of putting them in higher job grades.
We're not
I guess
going
that's
to do
where
that.
I'm going with this.
Gotcha.
Okay.
This may have been addressed, but in the building department, we're adding 3 full-time positions?
No, I think this is a correction, or, I don't know, Frank, the operation. I think, Frank, you can better explain the staffing.
Yes. First one is the building official. The second one, of course, is the community development director and the planning and zoning coordinator and currently permit tech. And right now I have a building code compliance officer 2 right now, looking to get a 1. And there's a planner in there at a percentage, and operations specialist. And the bottom one is a permit clerk. Those are the only ones.
Frank, just to my point, Building Code Compliance Officer 1 and 2, what's the difference between those?
Compliance officer 2 has more certifications statewide, more knowledge, where officer 1 is more administrative.
So he has to work up to be able to,
Exactly.
okay,
Exactly.
okay. Fair answer. Thank you.
And there's certain, like you say, certifications, classes he needs to take to be able to meet that.
Absolutely. Just to give you an idea, one of them is our stormwater inspector. That's one that she's working on right now. She already has her state code certification, but there's 5 total for the Officer 2. She has 3 of the 5. She's in her 7th month. She still has 5 more months to get the last 2.
Okay. And I think this should be the case with all of these on learning other skills to be able to move up and be and get that next step, not just stay and, get bumped up to another position just to get more money.
So,
They have to earn it.
I'm sorry, you finished?
No, that's all
yeah,
I've
yeah.
been trying to say in this
Sure.
whole deal.
So you do, I hate to repeat it, but you have an Officer 2 now, or you don't have an Officer 2 now? Because it has a zeros all the way across, and then you have a 1 and,
I have an Officer 2 right now. I have 5 positions in the building department, including myself,
Okay.
in the building department. And that's an Officer 2 that I have right now. I'm looking to get an Officer 1.
right, it looks like you used to have a 1, and now I guess they've turned into a 2, and you're looking to replace that.
Yes.
So you'd have a 1 and a 2, so that's,
Yeah, this may not be correct in prior years. We'll go back and take a look.
okay, I'm just looking,
because
it's going from 4.75.
Right, it looks like we're adding 3
7.
new positions. I don't think we're not adding 3 new positions.
No, the officer, you're right, we're not.
So we'll correct this slide.
The Officer 1, in the past, there was an Officer 1 in the past, because the contract that you have with the Pinellas County deputies, they did a lot of that stuff out in the field. So the Officer 1 did a lot of administrative in-house in the past. So we've graduated that position up to 2.
Okay,
So we'll correct this slide.
so
Thank you.
when you need a building department boat captain, let me know.
Soon,
Okay,
part-time.
okay.
Okay, the administrative assistant, is that the reason for the increase in the administrative services cost for the building department? We go
That
from
position's not there. The administrative assistant,
No, the administrative services, when you look back on, you're on the prior page 41.
Page 41.
Or sorry, operations specialist,
Oh, operation.
on page 42
42.
of 62 and 41 of 62. And I think we're 1 page off, at least from where Andrew always is.
So you're looking, the administrative services expenses that increased in the building fund, is that what you're
Yes.
focused on?
Is that the same, is that the?
So
what
that
the
doesn't,
increase is?
so that's based on that overhead allocation that's shared amongst all the different funds in varying proportions. And so,
And it's based on the total budget for the fund?
well, no, it's based on varying factors, so I can pull up the,
But it's essentially it's almost like a contribution to the general fund.
Okay.
For the business funds and the administrative functions are provided to the general fund, or some cities call it a payment in lieu of taxes. It's just each of the enterprise funds provide that administrative services allocation to the general fund.
there's an administrative personnel component, and there's an operating expense component. So let's say the administrative personnel, so we do take a small sliver of the Board of Commissioners, city manager, clerk, city attorney, finance, and human resources that provide services across all the broad spectrum of funds. So take the finance department, how much time do we spend verifying receipts at the marina versus recording the permit revenue in the general ledger and bank reconciliation? So how much of the time spent by finance is for building-related activities, depending on what they do and the volume, higher bit for building than it is for stormwater. So that's just an example. Accounting and auditing, so the cost of doing an audit, $55,000 budgeted. So we're going to share that audit cost not only to the general fund, but also to the other funds based on the proportion of the level of effort that auditors have to make when they're auditing the accounts under the building fund or the accounts under the marina fund or the sanitation and so on. So based on the level of complexity from an audit perspective, we put percentage allocations on all that. It's just a couple examples of all the different types of general, both personnel and admin and operating expenses that we allocate out. So the increase in the building was just based on the proportionate share and some higher percentages that were allocated to building in comparison to the other funds from last year to this year.
Okay, thanks.
And then Frank, you're the operations specialist position?
The operations specialist is really a coordinator. That's Holden downstairs, and he works with all the different folks downstairs as far as coordinating the entire building department. Oh, and he also does liens and rental, things like that also. He's got quite a lot on his plate, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know he stays busy. Something I don't see on here, and I may be overlooking it, is engineering services.
Are you referring to the building department for engineering?
Yes, yes.
We don't
I
have
think we budget for that in Public Works.
Yeah, that's all Public Works and Community
how do-
Development.
Is it?
Mainly community development, I believe.
Community development, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And that'd be in professional services.
Okay, community development, okay.
And also in capital projects, we include, so the capital projects have a component in there for engineering as well. And it's going to differ by project.
Yeah, well, I know on the Crystal Isle project, I think it totaled around $500,000 with add-ons that
We're
came
working on
about.
compiling all the detail that we'll bring back to a
Well, yeah,
workshop.
it was given to us last year when I questioned it, and so I'm still got questions on
That's what, yeah, we'll bring it.
engineering services, okay.
Frank, how is your department as far as staffing right now? You have enough staff? Are you still looking for staff? I understood that Dole and Associates was actually coming in and helping. Was that in your department?
No, that's
No.
at community development.
That's with community development. My department, we have the 5 in my department, and we're doing fine as far as holding everything down. Again, I just wanted that one officer, one position for more administrative stuff on the code enforcement side. We're getting a lot of code enforcement stuff,
I'm sure.
but we're doing fine as far as 5 positions.
And it's important to remember that every single, I think just about every permit application is reviewed by community development. That's the planning and zoning review. And, I mean, most of them begin over there, and then, well, I guess they're reviewed by your staff, but end up in planning and zoning and then go back to the building department.
Yeah, when they come in the front door, the 2 girls up front know where to send them. If they're FEMA-related, things like that, or engineering, then they'll go over to community development for their review before they come to me. But a lot of simple things like a roof replacement, a hot water heater, those all come directly to me.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, they don't need community development to look at them.
Good.
Mr. Mayor, I am here if needed.
Hi, Director Portell, welcome.
I've been here all along trying to stay out of trouble.
Smart move.
Director Portal, I asked you that same question then. How are you doing with staffing? I understood that we needed extra support from outside because you're having a hard time filling some positions.
Yes, we have not been able to fill our development review planning position. And so what we've been doing is covering with some help from Duell and Associates, and then some help from Giordano, Louis Cerna, who has worked with us as a consultant in the past. We have 2 days of Duell and Associates planned review person, and then a couple of days from Louis Cerna's person or himself. It's been a real struggle. Obviously, we have to put a lot more effort into review to make sure things are actually meeting our code when we're using consultants, because they work with more than one code and sometimes can confuse one for another or not realize things have changed in our own codes. But it's been unavoidable, as we've really not been getting qualified candidates applying for the job. Fortunately for us, as it just so happened, Duell and Associates had just hired the former engineer from Safety Harbor, who had been responsible for their development review process, and so he was up and running in terms of how to go about reviewing plans.
And Robin, you've been, as far as getting the staffing, I know this is all budget, but it's been several months.
We have,
Have you had any of those?
yes, we've been advertising in several locations, in particular those locations that typically do hire for planners, the American Planning Association, and also government.com, and other avenues that we were aware planners usually get jobs. By way of explanation, before COVID and the change in the economy, planning salaries had taken a considerable dive, and these positions were really dramatically underpaid for several years. It had reached the point, as a matter of fact, that the position we're looking for would probably have only brought in $35,000. It requires a master's in planning, and that level of pay does not warrant people going into the field for a master's degree, obviously. And so what happens in those cases is gradually you don't have very many qualified people coming out of school with the degrees that you need. There's always a lag when the pay starts catching up again with the demand. There's always going to be a lag. Sometimes they say about 7 years before you're fully flush in the market with the number of people you need. So salaries are just starting to catch up again, but the other thing that's complicating it is that local planners are pretty much stayed in positions and generally will not transfer into a smaller government, and we are one of the smallest. And currently the housing prices are gone up so dramatically that people coming from out of town looking at our positions have expressed alarm at the idea that they probably wouldn't be able to move in. We've had some other reports of people saying they're having to, for instance, move back in and lose their apartments, move back in with their families or other things. It's been a real stress on hiring in order to recruit people in from out of the area. Even, Florida-wide, it's pretty expensive right now for rental. So we'll keep trying.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm just trying to brainstorm here while you were giving us the challenges. I don't know if any of this, like Duell and Associates or whoever, I would imagine their fees are relatively high. I don't know if there's an outsourcing avenue where they don't actually have to live in the area here, because I would imagine a lot of this is scanned in or drawings or PDF, and you can work remotely on reviewing documents. I'm just trying to brainstorm, just trying to help.
Right, thank you. Well, we try to keep track of the fee schedule and what's available out there for consultants, and actually the two groups Doolin Associates and Calvin Giordano are very competitive. Definitely more competitive than consulting you would get from the East Coast. And those are usually the population centers are where you're going to find planning firms usually. Not all of our plans are scanned in yet. We are in the process of automating everything so that we can do the review online, and that may open up some opportunities for us in the future. And so we're trying to keep track of all the options, and as I said, keep track also of the cost of consulting. It does make me nervous. I'm sure it makes you nervous too, because I'm not the one who normally comes back asking for a budget amendment and having to report overspending. I usually save money by limiting the amount of engineering cost every year. But and for those of you who have been here long enough, you may remember when I came on, both groups were, the two groups that are currently serving us were also splitting up the planning function because there was no one here. And within 2 months, I had gotten back up to speed myself and was doing it all by myself, but of course couldn't do any of the other things that are required for planners. So that didn't hold for very long. We've got a lot of work for a community this size, and as Mr. Gomez was indicating, the plans that we look at, we do have to look at twice, once for planning, and then also we have to review the building itself for the FEMA regulations. So there's a lot of, we have rushes. There are certain times of the year when it gets really heavy, and then other times it lulls just a little bit. But we have a lot of things coming through.
I did see a line item here for a scanner in one of the reports that was $7,500. Was that for your department?
That was for my department. We have a 3-foot, 36-inch scanner now that's 8 years old, and I have a full-time permit clerk downstairs, and that's all she does is scan. So we've used that thing pretty much up. It's 8 years old, and we need to replace that. And that's what the...
Yeah, no, I would definitely support that. I just wanted to, I didn't understand if both departments could share.
We do.
Okay.
Everything that comes in the door gets scanned,
Yeah, perfect.
and everybody has access to it.
Perfect. That might help with some remote assistance. Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
And then just the other, moving forward here, through the document, we have the debt service, gas tax funds, really just recording, like the gas tax, just the revenues that come in and some of the expenditures like street lighting, traffic signals, and some of the maintenance that we have to do, or we contract with Pinellas County for the traffic signals. We pay Duke Energy for the street lights, obviously. The local option sales tax, again, that's this penny for Pinellas, where we just record it, money coming in, and then transfer out to capital projects. And then the final operating departments that have their own, the marina, the sanitation, marina, parking, sanitation, and stormwater, again, are in their own funds. Really no significant changes other than the one additional part-time parking enforcement and parking. Marina reflects just increases in just the economic and market conditions, mainly related with fuel. And so even though fuel costs have decreased, they're still not back to the levels, I think, when we adopted last year, the current year's budget. So that's reflected in next year's budget, why it's that much higher. You can see the revenues and just a comparison from the current year to next year. Last year we budgeted 2.1 million. We budgeted 1.7 for the current year. We're projecting to receive 2.1 million. That's additional 400,000 or 30%, at least 30% more. And then the budget for next year, 3.5 million, taking into account obviously our higher costs, but obviously the higher the revenue that we receive. And really no significant changes in their operating expenditures.
Robin, we had talked about a digital sign for up
That's
around the marina? Is it in
included,
here?
it's a capital item.
Okay.
But if we don't separately, we'll make sure that it's a separate line, but we did
I just
mention to
hadn't seen
include
it
it.
anywhere, that's all. I was, wanted to be sure it was still in there.
And mention the park, so the Marina Fund with the increase in the revenue due to the cost of fuel, the parking, as we raised our rate last year, that went into effect in this fiscal, I think early on this fiscal year. So you see the higher revenues by the different locations. And again, this is the first year we created a separate parking fund, but the finance staff was able, obviously, to calculate going back to fiscal '21, what our actual revenues and expenses were, and you can see the increase in revenue have been, I think, I would calculate fiscal '23 budget parking revenues as rather conservative, taking into account that parking can be rather volatile. You have a storm, a pandemic, then your parking revenue but of course we can amend it as we go throughout the year. And as I'd previously mentioned, I mean, we've been doing extremely well. Just the revenue in July was the highest we have ever received. It's likely not going to be the same for August, but certainly it's really our revenues are just year-round going to be higher than I think they've ever been. Really no changes in the expenses. Again, this shows where you transfer, and again, page 50 in the packet of the transfer to the general fund. And again, we can adjust that as we go throughout the year and amend based on the revenues and the expenditures. And again, just one additional parking enforcement officer.
And so, something the commission needs to keep in mind too, because two of you I know are new here, but the parking does a lot for this city, but you can grow complacent, and what we have run into just since I've been here is, one, the pandemic, which hit us hard, also the red tide. So although we do generate a lot of revenue from it, it's not something you can actually fall asleep and think you're going to have it year in and year out, because you're not. Because events will come to where it hits your parking revenue, and that's just something to keep in mind going on down the road. Right. Just want to get my 2 cents worth in on that.
And our sanitation fund, again, really this is funded by the fees that we collect for the trash collections, and then, of course, recycling. We will be bringing that back to you later in a few months to discuss, I think at the October workshop, September, next month. Be bringing back the results of the RFP. So we'll have that discussion as to how we proceed with recycling. Again, no significant changes, no increasing in staff, other than, again, setting the minimum hourly wage at $18. And again, we do allocate, in addition to the full-time staff, we do allocate a little bit of the public works salaries to both the sanitation and the stormwater funds. And the stormwater, again, paid by the fees that we collect. This is where the transfer in from the general fund, this is where we capture some of our road projects, or where they're funded from the stormwater fund. So that's the reason you see kind of some pretty high revenues, but the expenditures are significantly higher due to, again, the road projects that we just budget for in here, and those are the capital projects. And again, no significant change in personnel or other costs. And really toward the end before you get into the capital projects, a slide on page 55 that shows all of our positions by department, by fund. And again, really, the 3 full-time new positions plus a couple of the part-time positions that were either converted to full-time or increase in the hours. And there were a couple that we, again, like the HR, where we reduced the hours. Yeah. So 81.07 full-time equivalents.
I noticed on sanitation, we went from 3 sanitation workers to 2 sanitation workers.
And
But we went.
senior.
But we went from 3 senior sanitation workers to 5. So we had 3 guys that were promoted to senior sanitation workers.
I think that's an error. I haven't changed anyone's titles.
Okay.
We'll take a look.
Because,
at
yeah,
whether
because
that's
looking
correct or
here,
not.
it looks like you've had 3 employees that
3 to
were
5, you're not changing?
moved up.
Okay.
That's,
I'm actually down 3 employees currently in sanitation.
okay. I'm just looking to, that was part of my point about
Right,
the
senior.
different job grades and what are they doing to gain the ability to move up into a higher job grade. Okay, thank you.
And the slide at page 56, just by the positions by department. The summary of just what each position is in each department, just a listing of all of them. And as again, we discussed a little bit of the capital budget earlier. I don't know if you have any other questions, but that's the budget for fiscal '23, what we're proposing. The next, September the 14th, we will have the public hearings, and then the adoption of the budget on the 14th will be the first one, and then on September the 28th will be the second public hearing.
Okey-doke. Any other questions amongst the commission?
No, I'm good.
Okay, with that, is there any public comment on this?
Again, John Conley, 3 of you had, through the health benefits package, were saying as to very hard to find help. If you added in your package covering family, it would be more enticing to fill your positions, if you follow what I'm saying. A young person that has a family is not going to take a job without benefits in today's market, because if they go into a doctor or go to the hospital, it's a fortune, if you understand what I'm saying. So I think the way to entice people to fill your positions would be add that $30,000 extra as an incentive, so you get more people to come in. So we have better quality people also coming in, because they're going to be more family orientated, if you follow what I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Having no other business, this meeting is adjourned at 5:52 PM.